how Martha's unrealistic expectations destroy her relationship, she doesn't go to Mary in private and say, hey, Mary, by the way, I'm really needing some help. Sister, can you? She publicly accuses her in front of God and everybody else around her. Doesn't matter who she hurts. She wants her voice to be heard. Her expectation has superseded any other relationship around her. And so she publicly accuses Mary of being lazy regardless of her feelings. Is the issue really about Mary's laziness or about Martha's need for recognition and approval? Now notice how Martha's expectations impact her relationship with Jesus. She accuses him of being uncaring and unresponsive to her needs. Jesus, are you blind? Do you even care? She makes demands of Jesus that are disrespectful and contrary to his will. No one in this room has ever asked God something that was contrary to his will. So because she's living in a different reality than her expectation, the expectation is here, she's living in plan C, D, or F, and all of a sudden not only does it wreck her relationships, but it wrecks her expectations of what God is supposed to do. God, why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing it now? Martha's emotional immaturity leads her to make assumptions and demands of others and of God that are unrealistic and ineffective. If you've noticed around the sanctuary today, we have some Keep Calm posters. Now, they've been really, really popular the last 2 years. Most of you are very, very well aware of Keep Calm and Carry On. My question to you, well, first of all, do you have a favorite around the room? Anybody got a favorites? Keep Calm and Game On. What else? Hunt. Yeah, Deer Hunt. I had to put that in there for somebody. A lot of you, yeah, my favorite is probably the Spanish, and I don't keep calm. I really love that one. Does anybody know where the original Keep Calm and Carry On, does anybody know where that came from? Some of you do in this room. We'll get up here. Where does that come from? Wasn't it during the World War, kind of a tour or something? Tim, you got anything to add back there?
World War II, the Queen.
That's right, World War II. These posters actually come from 1939. It was a motivational poster by the British government at the beginning of World War II for England. Now, this war would claim the lives of more than 50 million people worldwide, and England was under constant threat of aerial and sea attacks. They were right in the thick of it. World War II threatened their existence, and to help the British cope with their daily fears and anxieties, the government came up with this: Keep Calm and Carry On. This brilliant publicity campaign, they printed 2.45 million copies, and it lasted 4 months before it was canceled. It was canceled due to criticism and cost. The criticism was the posters were patronizing and useless. And after spending a lot of money, they discontinued them. In the face of real fear and threats, the best their leadership could offer was Keep Calm and Carry On. Over my 30 years in ministry, I have often felt like the British government. In the face of helping others with broken marriages, drug issues, betrayal of friends and family, teen suicide, depression, and many more serious spiritual and emotional issues, sometimes I simply said, keep calm and trust God, when the solution to their problems were much more complex than their trust in God could fix alone. Now, please don't misunderstand me today. I believe that God has the power to transform anyone at any time, anywhere. Right. I think our trust in God can transform, heal, and help any life in this room. But sometimes we use that and we just say, hey, just trust in the Lord, when there may be some serious emotional issues underneath the surface that we're unwilling or unable to address or deal with. And sometimes those emotional issues cap off our ability to grow spiritually or understand what God is doing or even to hear His voice in our lives. So this doesn't negate what the Lord can do with any of us, but what we're trying to do, what we're looking at today, is trying to see the complexity of our issues, how we can trust God, but also walk an emotional pathway to healing. I have felt great frustration and pain as we have watched people over the years with serious emotional issues that we have genuinely loved, rescued, and invested in, and they just didn't get any better. And just as we celebrate their beginnings at our church and our church family, and like the death of a loved one, we grieve when they walk out of our doors. And they walk out of our lives with the same problems that they started with. So as we launch our new church with a new name and a new enthusiasm, maybe it's time for us to do church just a little differently. And that's what this series is about. The title of the book is Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, but I think anybody would come if I put that on the sermon title, so that's why we're calling it Keep Calm. Over the next 2 months, we're going to be sharing 8 steps towards emotional health. I believe that it's so important that all of our adult life groups throughout this same time, we're going to be going through the same material. So what you hear in there, you're going to hear out here. What you're seeing in videos, you're going to be reinforced in your life groups, also in here. So if you're not a part of a life group yet for our adults in this room, we pray that you would maybe just begin next week. Also, for those who are serving in student ministry, children's ministry, other things, we will eventually offer this again on an alternative time so that you can get this as well. And I pray that God will help us on the road to emotional and spiritual health. I pray that once we walk the path to healing, that God will raise up others so passionate about spiritual and emotional health that we will regularly offer these courses. And like we discussed in our Refuge series, those who receive mercy will be transformed to offer it to others. Those who receive emotional health might be able to offer that to others. Now listen, while we can lament over those who are not in our church body today, the truth is that this is needed for everyone here today. Our brokenness is just a little bit more functional than theirs, right? We are just better at hiding it or compensating for it than those who have walked away. Everyone in this room is not crazy, but everyone in this room is just a little crazy. All right? And so that's why we are here today. Most of us in here grew up in homes with unhealthy examples of conflict, management, and resolution. The majority here did not grow up with perfect examples of communication or parenting. We're just going along in life, doing the best we can, modeling usually what our parents modeled, what they modeled, etc. Many of us are unaware of why we feel the way we do, why we respond the way we do, or why we struggle the way we do. We just hope and pray that no one notices. And that gets us to Mary and Martha today. Mary and Martha represent 2 different pictures of the Christian life. All right? 2 different images. Both women, listen to this, both women are followers of God. Both women believe in Jesus. How could they not? He's in their home, right? They believe in who He is. Both demonstrated their love and devotion to Him, but like many of us, one of these women works very hard to cover up her emotional issues. And as the story begins, Jesus enters the village and is welcomed into the home of Martha. And we're going to put an example of what she, we don't know. I mistakenly said the first day, let's put up a picture of Martha. That's not a picture of Martha. That's a picture of some lady portraying Martha. But of the family, Martha is probably the oldest, and then Mary, and then Lazarus, probably the baby of the family. Now, we don't know this for sure, but each time Martha is mentioned in the Gospel, she's usually the one doing most of the talking, okay? John 11:5 mentions her first among her siblings, and in verse 38 in our text today, it says that Jesus welcomed into her house. Now, whether she's the oldest or not, it's obvious she's taken on the role as leader, organizer, and spokesperson for her family. In Luke 10, she's definitely in charge with certain expectations of what should happen at her house in her party. Okay, it's very, very clear. Now, before we become critical of Martha, I want to remind you she's actively serving Jesus, okay? She's highly invested in following Jesus. I believe she genuinely desires to please the Lord and to honor Him, but in her busyness, she's also missing Jesus at the same time. Now, verse 39 also describes Mary. We see her sitting at the feet of Jesus and listening to His words. The focus of her attention is Jesus, while she is the focus of the criticism of Martha. I don't know what is more impressive about this story, that Mary has chosen to listen to Jesus, or that she can even hear Him in the midst of the criticism and disappointment of Martha. And just as we shouldn't unfairly judge Martha, we shouldn't make assumptions about Mary either. She could have cleaned the house and worked to prepare the meal before the party started. She may have run to the market for last-minute purchases. We don't know. But what we do know is at the right moment and beyond any distraction, she chooses to be in the presence of Jesus. Mary and Martha's choices, expectations, and actions can help us understand some keys to spiritual and emotional health. You're going to hear this time and time again through the series. I'm just whetting your appetite today. I'm just giving you a little bit today. Number one, don't confuse doing for God with being with God. Don't confuse doing for God and being with God. This is a major theme for our series. Martha is probably an accomplished, successful woman in her home and in her community. Others probably admire her hard work, her dedication. She could have received community awards for her service and leadership. But the scripture is clear. She is leading a distracted life. Her service is not the issue. She's distracted because she's replaced being with God with doing for God. And guys, when you walk that path, when it's more about what you can do for Him rather than just being with God, the next logical step in that progression, with that kind of distraction, is that your Christian life becomes more about what people can see rather than who you are on the inside. We become like the Pharisees, who Jesus described as cleaning the outside of the dish while the inside remains dirty. Luke 11:39. The story of Mary and Martha reminds us not to confuse doing for God and being with God. Number two, unrealistic expectations can wreck your faith and relationships. Unrealistic, unwritten expectations can wreck your faith and your relationships. Martha is living a distracted life. Her lack of sensitivity to the presence and leadership of Jesus has devastating consequence in this passage. Unrealistic expectations. Unspoken and unrealistic expectations, once again, can wreck your faith and your relationships. Let me ask you this question. Could anyone describe you as someone difficult to live with? Has anyone ever described... Brian, you're laughing a lot. I don't know why. But has anybody ever described you as someone difficult to be around or to live with? Or have you ever had somebody in your family that every time a big gathering came up, you always kind of avoided the room with that person because you knew you were walking on eggshells every time around them? You just couldn't be yourself?
Yes.
Do you think anyone would describe Martha like that? Martha's biggest unrealistic expectation is that everybody should be like her. That's the temptation here, right? I mean, have you ever been tempted to think, man, if everybody in the world was just like me, everything would be solved, right? If everyone in my family could think and do just like me, it would all be over, right? This is Martha's temptation here. And because of her emotional immaturity, Martha seems impatient, critical, and constantly disappointed because no one is living up to her expectations. You may not be Martha in this room, but everyone in this room, teenager, adult, no matter where you are, everybody's living in plan B, C, D, F of your life. When you were growing up, your plan A, that great expectation of who you were going to be, what you were going to do, what kind of family you have, nobody's living that dream today, right? And so everybody's living below that while we still have the expectations of the plan A. And so those unrealistic expectations of my reality and everyone around me cause me, it really destroys my relationships and even my faith. Verse 40 says, but Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. Notice how Martha's unrealistic expectations destroy her relationship. She doesn't go to Mary in private and say, hey, Mary, by the way, I really need some help. Sister, can you... She publicly accuses her in front of God and everybody else around her. Doesn't matter who she hurts. She wants her voice to be heard. Her expectation has superseded any other relationship around her. And so she publicly accuses Mary of being lazy regardless of her feelings. Is the issue really about Mary's laziness or about Martha's need for recognition and approval? Now notice how Martha's expectations impact her relationship with Jesus. She accuses him of being uncaring and unresponsive to her needs. Jesus, are you blind? Do you even care? She makes demands of Jesus that are disrespectful and contrary to his will. No one in this room has ever asked God something that was contrary to his will. So because she's living in a different reality than her expectation, the expectation is here, she's living in plan C, D, or F, and all of a sudden not only does it wreck her relationships, but it wrecks her expectations of what God is supposed to do. God, why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing it now? Martha's emotional immaturity leads her to make assumptions and demands of others and of God that are unrealistic and ineffective. In verse 41, I love it. Jesus doesn't call Martha a sinner or a hypocrite, but he points to her lack of emotional health. He says, Martha, Martha, are you anxious and troubled? Or you are anxious and troubled about many things. He doesn't say, Martha, Martha, you're, come on in you guys. Martha, Martha, you're a hypocrite, you're a sinner. No, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. Jesus' words reveal that she may be an accomplished woman, community leader, but she is emotionally immature. Jesus indicates that her emotional infancy is impacting her relationships and her judgment. I heard a quote as I was preparing for this series. I heard a quote from a guy who went through this emotional series that we're going through, and he said, I realized I've been a Christian for 22 years and I am an emotional infant. He said, instead of growing and being everything I could be for 22 years, he goes, I have been an emotional baby 22 times. My prayer for us in this room is that we would begin to grow spiritually and emotionally. Jesus makes the connection between Martha's emotional immaturity and her lack of spiritual understanding in that moment. And this is the main theme of our series that you're going to hear time and time again from Pastor Peter Scazzaro. I'll put it up on the screen. It's impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. It's impossible. Which gets to our third and last point today before we close. Your choice to grow emotionally and spiritually comes with a promise. I want to encourage you today that if you make the choice to grow spiritually and emotionally, it comes with a promise. The difference between Mary and Martha was Mary's choice to rest and to listen to Jesus. Jesus said that Mary chose the good portion. Her road to spiritual and emotional health was not based on her strength, her abilities, but on her choice. The choice involves listening at the feet of Jesus, being willing to discover some things about yourself. Guys, there are going to be moments in this series where you may uncover some liabilities emotionally. There'll be moments where you're going to discover some cracks in your armor. Listen to me, don't listen. We're almost done. Some of you in these next few months are going to feel broken, alone, and maybe worthless. But there's a choice. This is a choice that the busiest, most responsible, weighed down person in this room can make. And that choice is to choose to sit at the feet of Jesus. Choose to sit at his feet. Perhaps the more you listen to him, the more you'll be able to listen to your own heart and to those around you. The choice to listen to Jesus and to commit to growing emotionally comes with a promise. Jesus says, it will not be taken from you. Verse 42 says, Mary has chosen the good portion which will not be taken away from her. Now guys, you can give it away. You can say, hey, I see the choice in front of me. I see that door to emotional and spiritual health, but I'm not walking through it. You can choose that, and you can shut the door. You can be so active and so weighed down with responsibilities that you push the choice off the table. But Jesus will never take it from you. The door will always be open to sit and listen to the Master. And unlike the keep calm posters that we have today, Jesus offers real growth and solutions, even when the war is coming. Would you pray with me?